Okay, so go ahead and let me know what your full name is.
Alfred Ernst Blaschke. That's German, E-R-N-S-T.
Okay, so
Father's name.
wonderful. Tell me where you're from, Al.
Well, I was born in Janesville, Wisconsin, but that was after 7 years, I guess, we moved to Milwaukee. So Milwaukee is my hometown, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of course. And I was there till I think I was about 24 years old when I left Wisconsin.
Okay, and when is your birthday?
January 4th, 1917.
Okay, so what does that mean to you?
Well, that means it's the big triple O is coming, and that was a goal. I mean, I had that as a goal because I had two sisters. Both of them I thought would make 100. One of them died at 97, and the other died at 98. And I thought both of them would make 100, and neither one did. So I'm just happy to finally have a Blaschke in the family there that made the 100.
So tell me a little bit about your family. You had how many brothers, sisters, that sort of thing?
One brother. He was the first one born, so he was 10 years my senior. So we weren't exactly seeing eye to eye. But and then I had four sisters. I broke a string of four sisters, so they were so happy to see the boy. That's all they called me, was boy. Here, boy. A couple, 3 years, I guess, before I finally knew what my name really was, you know. But then I had another daughter after that, sister after that, and she was my favorite because she was younger than I could boss her. So she was my favorite sister. She probably died at 86. Actually, there's a good life in our family, and I have to say that my mother must have knew what she was doing when she was cooking for us, because there was my mother and two sisters died at 86, and then I told you I had a 97 and 98, and me with almost 100, and that's pretty good years for one family.
Awesome. So tell me about one of your favorite childhood memories.
Favorite memories?
Childhood memories. When you were a kid.
Well, one thing I remember on the farm, I was collecting eggs from the chickens, and I got to the barn, and there was a nest up beam high, but on the wrong side of the beam where I was. So I had to cross across another beam about maybe 9 foot high there, and I started going across that beam so I could get the eggs on the other side. And I fell flat on my face, and so nothing happened. Said I might have trouble with my nose later on, but I don't think I got nose trouble. I tried not to have nose trouble all my life.
So, what kind of things did you like doing when you were younger?
Well, I loved tennis. I played a lot of tennis, and I got 3 more guys. It was tennis was so popular at that time because this was a depression, and that was probably the cheapest game. And so you'd try to get a court to play, and you might have to wait a couple of weeks to get a court. So I finally bought a net, and I got 3 other guys to make a commitment for every Sunday morning at 5 o'clock. We'd meet at the park, and I'd put up my net till 8 o'clock, and we'd play from 5 to 8. And that's the way I got in a lot of tennis. And of course, in baseball, junior, what you call American Legion teams. We had a 31st Street Aces, and that's between that. And I never got into college or high school games because, or athletes, because I was peddling papers all my life. I mean, all through high school, I should say. And so I never had a chance to get in with a team, which I would have liked to have done. But so between that, that's about the only thing. I didn't play any golf at that time until I left Milwaukee. But that would be it, tennis or baseball. Oh, ice skating, of course, in the wintertime, ice skating in the wintertime. That was fun.
You said you were throwing papers?
Yeah, I kept my paper out even after high school because of the times. I mean, I couldn't possibly afford college, so I kept my paper out. So in the morning, I went to vocational school because that's where the companies go when they want to hire an apprentice. And so I figured I'll go there. I went to vocational in the morning, peddled my papers in the afternoon, and then in the evenings, I went to another school where I was getting technical subjects, which would be qualified for possible attending University of Wisconsin at Madison. And so I was busy until I think I did that for a year, a little over a year, before Pauling and Harnischfeger came to this vocational school and wanted about a half a dozen apprentices, and one of them was a tool and die maker. And I was fortunate that the instructor picked me as the tool and die maker. And I didn't know what a tool and die maker was, but I learned. And it was a well-respected trade in those days, and I was proud to be a A1 tool and die maker.
So when you're making these tools and dies, what would be one of the most difficult types of tools or dies to make?
Well, it would probably the ones which had the closer tolerance. I mean, some of them would have plus or minus 10 thousandths. Well, that's an open figure almost. Then you have one with maybe plus or minus a couple of tenths. Now, when you get something like that, everything's got to be perfect. And you got to put a lot of time in that and make sure it's perfect. You're making a gauge to check something, and that's got to be right and close, you know. And occasionally I'd get into making actually maybe a drilling press, make the whole press, everything about it. I mean, actually I was a tool and die maker, so I got the prints. I looked the job over, decide how I'm going to build it, and then direct the machine men to do what I want them to do with the parts, you know, so I can put it together and make the tool. So.
And how did the tool and die making impact your career as what you did?
Well, my whole life was actually around the tool and die. In other words, 20 years as a tool and die maker, and then 20 years in the sales end of it. Okay. And the story there, you might say, is I was going to Detroit to look around for a job up there because of the auto industry making changes all the time. And a guy asked me he said, if you go through South Bend, Indiana, would you please look up South Bend Tool and Die for me? So I did that for him, and I went on to Detroit. And Detroit was just too damn busy for me. I didn't go for that. I never even tried to get a job, and just went back where I was. Then I decided a couple of days later, or a week later maybe, well, why don't I go to work for South Bend Tool and Die? So I wrote a letter to Mr. Hoover, who showed me around, and I got a letter back from Scotty Anderson, and he offered a job, and it was quite a bit more than I was making, and it was overtime, and it was a night job, and that paid 10% bonus. So I was just making money hand over foot there for a while. I think I even sent some money home there because it was so easy. But I mean, I was rated number one, top tool and die man, and there was about maybe a dozen tool and die shops in South Bend. I could go to any one of them, no matter how bad the industry was working. I could go to any one and get a job because they'll never turn down a top man, you know. I mean, they're always looking for those. So I didn't, never had to worry about that. And I enjoyed the sales end of it. On South Bend, Indiana, that's the home of Notre Dame. And this little company I worked for had 55 season tickets for Notre Dame. I couldn't believe that. But so every home game, we had a bunch of customers come in. And so it was a big weekend. And saw all the games. So let's see, I was not a Notre Dame fan when I first went to South Bend. But, you know, the old story, if you can't lick them, you join them. So in those days, Notre Dame was beating everybody. And they had super coaches. And remember, Era Parseghian was one, and Lou Holtz another one. And both had 10 years there. And both won a national championship. So it was a terrific, a really enjoyable service in the sales end.
Tell me something. What was your favorite car that you ever saw or had?
A car?
Yeah, just.
Well, maybe back in 1941, a guy I was working with, he was taking a trip out west, and he wanted to know if I'd be interested in going. I said, sure, I was ready to go any place all the time. And so I went with him, and he had a Dodge, and he had no trouble, and we went up Pikes Peak, and in those days, that was a dirt road, and he never had any trouble, never had water trouble or anything. So I said, I think I'll buy a Dodge when I get back. So I went to, that's another story. I went to the dealership there, and he was taking care of somebody else, and when he got back, when he finally come to me, he asked if I'd noticed the gentleman he was with, and I said, no, I didn't notice. He's a minister. He's a Baptist minister in East Moline, and he's looking for somebody to share the expense of his apartment. And so he's wondering whether I'd be interested. Well, I at first glance, first moment there, I said, I didn't think so. I didn't say that, but I mean, I think so. As I kept thinking about it, I thought that would be interesting to find out. So I accepted that, and so I lived with him for about 6 months, and before he was transferred. But I'd have the boys over, and he just like one of the boys, except if we had a drink, he wouldn't drink. That was the only difference between him and anybody else. And so it was a very enjoyable 6 months.
So 1941, we all know what happened in 1941. What were you doing during that time?
Well, I was working in South Bend for South Bend Tool and Die, and I didn't know it at the time, but until I got there, and started working there, I realized that they were doing a lot of work for Pratt & Whitney aircraft, and they're located in East Hartford, Connecticut, and at that time, they were the biggest builders of airplane engines. And so the tools that we were making there was tools that they needed to make the parts for the engines. And so evidently my draft board figured that there wasn't anything I could do in the Army that would be more important than making tools so that they could make those parts for the engines. So I never got in the service. Near the tail end of it, a friend of mine came home. He was in the paratroopers, and I liked the uniform he had, and I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to do, be parachuting, and so I went down to sign up, but as usual, they wouldn't take the. So I'm doing my flying, I guess, in another couple of weeks here.
Okay. Well, so at what point in your life did you meet Ellie?
Well, 1960. I met her in 1960. I covered the East Coast for this company in South Bend, Indiana. And I would go for 2 weeks at a time because I was single at the time. This was between marriages. I was single. And in the summertime, I'd hang, and my weekends would be, I'd be near the shore. In the wintertime, I'd go up in Vermont skiing. And but now, one of my coworkers had a sister lived on Long Island, and he asked me if I would consider bringing her back to South Bend on one of my trips, and I agreed with that, and I checked my boss, and that was okay. So this weekend, I'm going to bring her back. So I stayed in New York. And now I normally stayed in New Jersey because it's a lot less complicated, a lot less traffic. And but because she's going to meet me in New York there at the hotel, I stayed there in New York City so she could come by the what do you call it, subway, and she was there in the morning. So that night, Friday night, I stayed in New York. I went to a Broadway show, and after the Broadway show, I decided I'd walk up Broadway, and everybody, I mean, that's just like the middle of the day, 10 o'clock at night there, and so I went past the boxer Dempsey's restaurant, Jack Dempsey. He has a restaurant right on Broadway, and I stopped to look at it outside, and I think I'd like to go in there and maybe just have a cup of coffee or maybe a piece of pie or something. And I thought, geez, it'd be nice if I had somebody to go in there with. So I stopped some gal coming to my way and asked her the time. And she told me the time, and then I said, I said, I'm just going in here for a little bite. I said, would you be interested in joining me? Oh, no way. And I kept telling her, it's not going to be long. It's maybe 15 minutes, maybe a half hour. And so she finally agreed to go in. And so that's probably what it was. Maybe it's 45 minutes, I don't know. But so I took her home in the cab. She was walking. She was staying with one of her girlfriends, but her girlfriend went to a UN meeting, party that night, and of course Ellie couldn't go because she didn't work there, so that's why she was alone. Anyway, I did get her telephone number the next time. That was like in. Ellie could tell you the exact date that was, and the exact date it was when I called her the first time. She remembered all that. But that was in August that I saw her, and I think it was like November maybe when I went back. It seemed like a long time, maybe October. And I called her, and I got a date for that Saturday night, and that worked out real fine. And probably the next time back, I saw her again. And after that, I think after that time right there, I knew she was the one I wanted. And so that was a long distance courtship. And I'll tell you, that was absolutely fantastic wife. I mean, there's nothing, I couldn't exaggerate in any way how good that was. It was just magical.
How long were y'all married, Al?
Well, she died on our 49th anniversary, right on our anniversary. And we didn't figure on getting that many years in. But it was a second marriage for both of us. And neither one of us had any children. So that was no problem. But when I did ask her to marry me, the first thing she said was there wouldn't be any family. And why? And she said because she was over 40. And in those days, a first birth after 40 was a no-no. And so I agreed. I said I wanted her anyway. So David was born about 2 years after we were married. So about a year later, probably she changed her mind. I'm saying that she probably was satisfied enough with the marriage so that she decided to take a chance. And of course, everything worked out fine. He was all there, and she had to count his toes and fingers before she was satisfied that he was all there. It was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's what made my life so beautiful.
So how many children did y'all have?
We just had one, and so we were lucky to have that one. And he's got 3 boys, and that's why we moved from Arizona to Texas to watch the boys grow up. And the twins, they had twins first, and they just started college this year. And one of them is at Texas here in Austin, and the other is at Texas A&M College Station. And so now I've kind of raised my bar from 100 to 104, so I can watch the boys. I can see the boys graduate from college. That's what I'd like to see.